folks. Welcome to class number 54 on Faith and Calm. I need it this week, so whatever. I won't tell you what the interesting stressors that are going on this right now. But anyway, I think it's going to be interesting. We're going to talk a little bit about an interesting way to understand about what is a Jew, what is our Jewish identity, who we are, and some of the classic, issues that happen right now in today's society. And I'll try and apply it. And I'm going to do it in a very unusual way. In the last week's parsha, there one of the pieces that was discussed was about kosher animals. Which ones are kosher? Which ones are not? And okay. And I don't know if you know this, but does anybody know? Well, except for Sari, she'll know this right off the bat, so you're disqualified. But we'll ask everybody else. Do you know what signs you need to have in order for a fish to be kosher? Anybody know?
Is it
fins and scales?
Or?
Fins and scales. Oh, this is great. Okay, Sari, you get brownie points too. I mean, it'll cut you out.
What do I
Fins
get?
and scales.
I don't get an Amazon card.
Right. In fact, you can go to the store, if you want. You can, this is one of the things. You don't have to go to a kosher store. Go all the time. Used to go to non-kosher stores. You go to the store and all you have to do is just make sure that there were some scales on that fish and there's some fins, and you're good to go.
Can I add a point if you're going to say that?
You should probably make sure it's salmon or something.
No,
like that.
also on a kosher fish, the scales are the kind that come off really easily. Right. If you have to tug, and if it takes a little skin off with it, it's not a kosher scale. Anyway.
Okay.
Oh, that's interesting.
That was confusing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
but that's, I don't know. I get a salmon, you get these big, 20-pound things down at North Coast. You go down to the port. Yeah, I'm advertising. You go there and get it really cheap, right on the dock and 5 Dry Dock, and you get this fish, and then they got
Where do you go? Say
no. Yes, we'll talk about it later.
North Coast.
We'll talk about it later.
Later, we'll go into shopping here. So you get the salmon, you get this fish. The thing is, the Gemara, the Mishnah actually, and Hulin says that, by the way, you should know that every fish that has fins doesn't necessarily have scales, but every fish that has scales will have fins. Okay, now that's interesting, because now then why do I need both fins and scales? I mean, really, all you'd have to say is any fish with scales is kosher. You don't need the fins. The fins are automatic. If you got scales, you're going to have fins. And they've never discovered another fish in 2,000 years that actually doesn't have fins. If it has scales, it has scales. So why do you need this? So Rabbi Akiva said, they asked Rabbi Akiva, and he said, that's got Yagdil Torah v'yadir. It makes the Torah bigger. Which is a question that you have to ask. What do you mean bigger? Okay, so I added another word. I added the word scales, fins into the thing. I said, kaskeskas and snapper. So I had snapper as another word, and I made the Torah bigger because it's an extra word now in the Torah. That doesn't work. So this is an interesting intro to a very relevant and contemporary problem that you will hear in Jewish circles all the time. And that is, are we Jews supposed to be parochial and tribal? And, is it something, Judaism is something for Jews, but it's not for the whole world? Or is it something, or are we, that's what we are? Or are we universalists? We're into Tikkun Olam, and we're supposed to fix the whole world, and we're supposed to be a light to the nations, and we're supposed to do everything. And these are two big trends within the Jewish world. Ever since the Napoleon and the Emancipation, it's a constant debate. It used to be that Jews didn't have a choice. They just were Jews, and you weren't allowed to be part of the world. But now, the last 200, 300 years, there's not one kind of Jew anymore. There's Orthodox Jews and conservative Jews. There's liberal Jews, and there's Reform Jews, and there's Reconstructionists, and there's Hasidic, and there's ultra conservative, and there's Bagel and Lax Jews, and there's don't bother me, I'm an atheist, and I'm a Buddhist Jew, and everything is an adjective now. You can't talk to anybody. They've all got these different flavors of Judaism involved, and and we all fight with each other. So it was very twice a year Jews, less than twice a year Jews. Don't call me. I'll be. It's everything, and so forth. There's all these different trends in there and so forth. And as the Lubavitcher Rebbe once made a joke for Bergen, he said, it's very interesting. When two Jews that get together, what do they say traditionally? The first one says to the second one, Shalom Aleichem. And what is the second one supposed to say back to him? He says,
Aleichem Shalom.
Aleichem Shalom. Aleichem Shalom. So the Rebbe said, he said, that's very interesting. And if I say good morning to you and you say morning good back to me, that's very strange. Why don't you just say good morning back? I should say Shalom Aleichem, and he should say Shalom Aleichem. Why does the other guy say Aleichem Shalom? And he says, because that's the nature of Judaism. The first thing we have to do is decide that we disagree. I say Shalom Aleichem, and you reply back, you got it all backwards. It's supposed to be Aleichem Shalom. And then we can have a discussion, we have to. So there's two separate ways of looking at this whole thing. It's two separate, two separate approaches. And it doesn't seem that like they reconcile at all in any way. And, then we do it. So let's first look at the approach. The approach to Jewishm expansiveness is universal. So they tell a story. You probably have heard this one.
I'm going to relate this to fins and scales.
Yes, I'm going to tie it all back to fins and scales. Don't worry, we're going to get back to it. So it goes as follows. The story is as follows. Rabbi Dr. Abraham Tversky, who passed away in the last year in Pittsburgh, a big psychologist into addiction and drugs and all sorts of other kinds of stuff, big speaker and so forth, was once flying on a plane, and he looks like a very traditional Jew, Hasidic Jew, squared beard and a hat and a coat and everything, speaks Yiddish and so forth. He's sitting on the plane next to a Jewish lady who looks at him and says to him in perfect Yiddish, she says, you're a shanda, you're a shame. You people, you give a bad impression to all the other Jews. You cause anti-Semitism, just saying in Yiddish, you don't eat with other people, you're apart from you have these weird old customs and so forth. Why can't you be a normal human being and join in with the rest of the society and be, and join together with us? So Rabbi Tversky turns to her and says in perfect English, he says, excuse me, I don't know the language you're talking. I'm Amish. Can you tell me what you were saying to me? And she gets really flustered and she says, oh, you Amish, I respect you so much. You have such a rich traditional heritage and you're proud of it and you're not ashamed of it. Oh, I really admire the Amish a tremendous amount. At which point, that was the time for Rabbi Tversky to reply back to her in Yiddish saying, he says, Boy, is been Amish, you'd be proud of me. But now that you see that you think that I'm Jewish, you think I'm ashamed. He says, let me bless you and give you a blessing that you should appreciate in your own people the same traits that you see in other people. That's his introduction to this idea. And there's, as we also know the story with Rabbi Shlomo Carlebach, who was hanging around 770 in the early days in the 60s and so forth. And he used to go to universities and grab Jews and bring them back to the Lubavitcher Rebbe, and actually in the 50s. And anyway, so they asked him, how did you find out? How did you know if somebody's Jewish? So he said, it was easy. I just went on campus and I would ask you, are you Catholic? And I said, yeah, Catholic. Is Protestant? Are you, this? No. And then he'd say, I come to a Jew and he'd say, what are you? And the guy would say, I'm a human being. He said, I knew that guy was Jewish. He'd grab him and bring him to that 770. So this is the idea that, Judaism is no walls. I want to do my own thing. Everything is my own, just go everywhere, be free, go everywhere we want. Or is it, there's a tradition, and we should keep the traditions and the separateness and so forth. And it seems like that's a big fight. And the answer is it shouldn't be. And the solution to this comes, and I've told the story before, but I think this will be a slightly different way of expressing it, and hopefully it'll be interesting. So it's from a story in the Torah. This is a story of when Yaakov met Esav. Remember, Yaakov had to flee from his brother Esav. His brother wanted to kill him. Happens a lot in families. He ran away. He didn't do it. He didn't say anything. He just, he just looked like he did, and his mother sent him away. So, I think people get angry at that level. And he ran away. And he spent 20 years with Lavan, and he was coming back. And he sent messages to his brother Esav saying, I want to meet with you. And Esav came with 400 soldiers. And so Yaakov figured, this is it. This is war. And I'm going to prepare myself for war because my brother is still after me. And he was quite reasonably perturbed and worried. And then the next day we read the story and we see there was no war. Esav hugged him and kissed him, and they were a brotherly connection. And the question is, what changed between one night where he was preparing for war and worried about his kids and worried about his wives, and the other day where there was no problem at all? This story, there's one little story, very strange story that happens in between at that night. And that night, I'm just refreshing your memory, that story goes as follows. It says that Yaakov was left alone. He was and he was all by himself. And then he was wrestling with this guy. Wait a second, he was alone. Who's he wrestling with? He's all alone. There's something wrong already with the story that needs some explanation. And then it says he wrestled the entire night, and the guy was trying to overpower Yaakov, and Yaakov finally overpowered him. And Yaakov said, I want you to bless me, which also is hard to understand. If somebody jumps you in a dark alley and fights with you all night, you don't ask for a blessing, you ask for the police. But he asked for a blessing. And what was the blessing he said? I said, what's your name? And then he said, your name shouldn't be Yaakov anymore, your name should be Yisrael, which is also very strange. He asked for a blessing. What do you mean, change my name? Okay. And this change of name, this term, Yisrael, that the Jews are called Yisrael, comes from this particular event. So this tells you something very deep about the Jewish psyche and about our fears and our worries and everything else. Somehow changing from being a Yaakov to a Yisrael is fundamental thing that we all have to do, and we have to probably fight it every day. And this is what the story is telling us. What is the change from Yaakov to Yisrael? The change from Yaakov to Yisrael, Yaakov means what? It means
Heal.
Means heal. Because when they were both being born, Esav and Yaakov was holding on to the heel of Esav. So his father called him heel. Okay, that's great. That's what the psychologists call empowerment, Call your kid heel. You'll give him a real confidence for the rest of your life. Who am I? I am a heel. I'm not even my own heel. I'm holding on to somebody else's heel. Who called you this? Oh, my father. What's your father's name? Yitzhak. What does Yitzhak mean? Joke. Okay. So the father, whose name is Joke, gave his kid a name called Heel. All right. You can wonder why Jews are so messed up. I mean, this is our heritage. This is where we come from. The joke gives a rip to the heel. I mean, there's something off about this whole story here that you have to understand. And then the next thing that we see about Yaakov is that he wants to buy his brother comes, he's famished, and he wants to eat something. And his brother says, give me your birthright. I want sign it over to me. And then he finally does get it, he steals it. There's a whole incident with the Yaakov, Yitzhak was dying or thought he was dying, and he wanted to give the blessing, and Yaakov took this away from him, took this whole birthright away. In simple words, Yaakov was defined not by himself. He was defined in terms of his relationship with Esav, and he was always trying to become Esav. He wanted Esav's position. He was envious of it. And this is a psychological problem a lot of people have. And it's not unheard of that we have this thing that we always are envious of somebody else. Only if, oh, if I only if I married so and so, only if I said such and such. Oh, if I only was thin, oh boy, my life would have been different, you know, and so forth. If I took that job that I was supposed to get, I didn't do it, and so forth. And a lot of people go, oh, only if only. I remember Isaac Asimov a short story called "What If." It's a very interesting little short story. What if, you know, this little couple playing this. What if I didn't do this? What if I didn't do this? In other words, you're always envious and always looking at the outside and looking for empowerment and information by trying to become somebody else. So the angel tells them, listen, you know, you're alone, meaning you're fighting with yourself. You need a name change. You need to find out who you are. You need to find your own identity. You cannot meet your brother until you actually discover who you are. And when he does discover who he is, he discovers that he's a prince. Yisrael means Rosh, right? Yisrael is, yeah. Usually Rosh, that you're a prince, that you don't have to be defined in terms of somebody else. You are a piece of godliness. You are holy. You are whoever you are. This is who you are, and you don't have to in any way define yourself as by your brother. And as soon as Yaakov is comfortable in his skin, then all of a sudden, Esau is also comfortable with him, because that's the way it works. Once you have an identity yourself, now you can relate to other people. But if you don't have a good identity yourself and you're always feeding off of other people's energy, you can't be really there for other people. So this was a big lesson for Yaakov, who became Yisrael, and for all of us. We have to stop trying to define ourselves and figure out who we are by trying to fit into the rest of the world. So let's wrap this back up to the fish, to the fins and the scales. What is scales and what are fins? So scales are what protects the fish, right? You have to have a protection. You have to know who you are, have an identity, develop yourself, become something by yourself without trying to figure out what, you relate to everything else. But that's not enough. You got to have fins too. You got to move. Fins make you go from one place to another. It takes you out into the world. You go see new places. You infect other places and so forth. So the mistake that is in this whole battle between different groups and Jews and this and it should be parochial or not is actually a mistake. You have to have both. But you have to start with your identity, and then you can be an identity for other things. You can be an identity for other people. You can influence other people. Once you are very clear who you are, you're comfortable with yourself. You're not constantly trying to be some globalist in something. You know that you're confident. I'm who I am. Like Rabbi YY likes to quote and says, they say that when a person is 20, he's always measuring himself by other people. And when he's 40, though, he becomes comfortable with himself and says, I really don't care what other people think. And you're comfortable with yourself. And when you're 60, you finally say, you know what? You find out nobody was really looking at you anyway. And when you're 100, like that 100-year-old lady, you finally realize, the best thing about being 100 is, right, no peer pressure. So you got to be comfortable in who you are. You got to be comfortable in your own skin. Once you figure out who you are, you find out about Judaism, you find out what it means to be a Jew. You have a family trait, that you need to find out. Who are your parents? Who are your grandparents? What were they like? My brother's all into this genealogy stuff because he was trying to figure out who he is. He hasn't figured himself out yet, I guess. And he's going in it. He's going at it. Ouch, 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 ouch. I just got kicked 5 times. Anyway. So you have to figure out who you are, and then you can go. The metaphor for this is very simple. So a guy once came to a rabbi, and he told the rabbi, he says, on Rosh Hashanah, I'm sort of tired the way we blow the shofar. You always blow it from the narrow end out and so forth. I want to blow from the wide end. I don't want to be parochial. I don't want to be tribal. I don't want to be narrow in my life. I want to blow from the big end. So he takes the shofar and tries to blow from the big end. And of course, you know what you get when you blow from the big end? Nothing. You don't get any sound at all. So if you want to have a sound in the world, you got to first figure out, you got to concentrate and figure out who is my personality, who I am, and be comfortable with that. And you know what? That makes other people unbelievably comfortable with you. They can accept you now because they say, oh, okay, yeah, I'm happy with that. You know, I don't have to be you. You know, you're not trying to be me. You're not getting into my skin. So good, you can be comfortable. So this is the lesson of the fins and scales, and part of our Jewish identity, who we are, is, you know, we just aren't comfortable. And a lot of us they're searching around trying to find out, you know, how can I fit in better with other groups? And maybe if I just be, you know, I go golfing with them and I pretend to be, and it never worked. It never worked. The countries that were the most assimilated, Spain in the time of the Inquisition, before the Inquisition, Germany, certainly people were so well integrated into society in those days. And you know what? They didn't accept us. In the end, they knew exactly who they were. And they said, you know what? You know, you may know all of Bach and Schiller and all the other great German authors and philosophers, but they really they didn't accept us, you know. But in places where we had firm identity, they do accept us. So I don't say that this is an easy task always. It's part of our heritage from the time of our first forefathers, you know, till I find out that we're really special, and you know, and then you can appreciate the specialness in other people too. So fins and scales, the lesson of fins and scales. First find your own identity, and then you can swim, you can go out. Molly had a question.
Wonderful. Well, yes, thank you. This is wonderful teaching. And why he was named Yisrael at that point, I'm still not clear about. And also, was that the point at which God was deciding that would be the name of Israel, you know, for Israel? Was that because he was the father of the 12 tribes, or what? What was the reason?
Remember what happened that night. So he was fighting with this guy. His name was Yaakov. But who was he fighting with? So some of the commentators say who he was fighting with. He was fighting with himself. He was struggling with himself because he was trying to figure out who he is. So the angel was not so necessarily an external thing. It was really him. He was fighting with himself, and he came finally to the conclusion, you know, that he is, you know, he should not keep defining himself by his brother. And so the change of his name is significant in this transition from his identity as somebody who is identified as somebody who's constantly trying to take his brother's position to somebody who is independent. And that's also why, that's that interesting detail. It says that until this point in time, he was limping. He was limping when he came away from the battle. But when the sun shined on him, then he was healed and he wasn't limping anymore. And so the idea of limping is, yeah, you're sort of crippled, you know, if you can't really be who you are and you're always being some poor copy of somebody else, then yeah, you are somewhat crippled. You're not really able to stand on your own. So once he finally came fully to the conclusion of his new identity, then yes, his new identity is exactly who he is, Yisrael. He is a prince of God. That's what the word means. Kael is God, and Yisrael is the servant or the prince of God. So he actually has an identity. He is an ambassador for God in this world, which is what the Jews are supposed to be. We're supposed to change the world. The Tikkun Olam and the idea of light to the nations is certainly our role. Yes, we have to do that, and the world looks for us to that, and they actually feel comfortable when we actually do this. Rabbi Jacobson finished this whole story with his famous story with the army in his speaking to all the chaplains. But I'm out of, somehow my voice is gone, and I told the story already, and my time is up. But I think it all fit in, you know, very nicely too, because of course there too, all the chaplains applauded him, you know, tremendously, because they saw a Jew who was comfortable in his own skin. Go ahead.
It's a wonderful lesson.
Yeah.
So was that when Yisrael became the name of
all Jewish
Israel?
people, because we all have this issue. It's in our genes.
It became the name of all Jewish people.
All Jewish people, because we all have this challenge of, you know, we're, you know, I think some Jewish community said, you know, we're all moonshots. We're all from, you know, outer space, you know, we say, beam me up, because we really are aliens. And the world looks at us and says, you know, are you human? You know, you're a little strange, you know, you're Jewish, you know, do you fit into this planet? Everybody else is just, this is, you know, just part of the the planet. So we're trying to figure ourselves out. And that's a lot of these classes is about trying to figure out who we are. And the answer is they love us. They really do. But we just have to be comfortable with who we are. Thank you.
Wonderful.
And
Thank you. Hester
Thank
Schmidt.
you so
Yasher
much.
Koach.
That's great.
good.
Yasher Koach.
Very, very nice. Funny. With the laugh, father is the laughing
Pardon?
laughter and the son is the heel.
Yeah. So before, I think I want to say a little thing about what Pascal Shimon just said. And first of all, I want to say hello. Hi, sorry. Hi, Amy. Hi, Molly. Hi, Emily. Hi, Yael, and hi to whoever else is listening. So just to make a comment on something that Pascal Shimon said, and to quote another rabbi that we like to quote a lot, Rabbi Manis Friedman, so what is this thing, knowing who you are? And what is it? You know, in the secular world, I have to say there's a tremendous emphasis on, you know, if you want to raise a kid, everybody will tell you you have to make sure that kid has self-esteem. And so either you tell them that they're great, or you encourage them to, you know, see their strengths and see their, you know, see everything that's good about themselves. And Rabbi Friedman says, and I think it's very interesting, he says it's very overrated, this emphasis on self-esteem. And it's not really what makes a person happy. Self-esteem is not what brings happiness and security. If you want a child to be happy and to be secure, it's not good enough that they think that they're great. Much, much, much more effective is to tell them what they're supposed to do, to tell them what their job is in life. When a person knows what their job is in life, it is the foundation that they're looking for. That's what everybody's looking for. Give him a knowledge of what he was born to be, and that is that's the strongest enabler that exists on the face of this earth. And I really think that it's true. So a kid can think they're the best singer, they're the best musician, they're the best writer. A lot of people do, and they have self-esteem worth zippo because they don't know what to do in life. They don't know why they were born. They don't know their purpose. When a person discovers their purpose, when a person is told their purpose and they set about doing it, there's nothing that makes you feel like you're walking on solid ground like that. So that's what I would like to add to what Yaskel Shimon said. And I would like to, first of all, how is everybody? Everybody's good? You're all good? Hope so. Okay. And I'm going to make it short because I was not good for the past 48 hours. I got really sick yesterday, and today I'm much better, thank God. But I'm hoping to return to school tomorrow, so I have a lot of stuff to do.
What
And
were you sick with?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I had some kind of flu or something. It was like out of the blue, and I don't know how I picked up such a thing. I really don't know anything about it. But anyway,
Maybe because
thank
you
God.
have like little children.
No, anyway, I'm not gonna. I'm not even gonna go there because I just want to end quickly. So not end quickly. I love doing this. So I want us to have our session, and then maybe we can end a little bit early. So I want to say that what in my section of our little session, I like to start by saying 4 things. Number 1, we are in an extraordinary time, and the more we remember that, the more we'll remember what our function is in this world. We are not this is 2021 is not just any old year, and our time is not just any old time. It's what is it? We have entered the stage of the of Geula. We are crossing the threshold into the time that was promised to humanity since day one. And how do I know this? Because the Lubavitcher Rebbe told us this, and the Lubavitcher Rebbe made dozens, hundreds, I don't know how many astounding predictions, and they all came true. And so anyway, and okay, number 2, what I always like to say is we, each one of us, our souls were handpicked to be in this world at this time, and not to be a spectator, but to be an active player in this major revolution. Number 3, Hashem didn't leave us alone. He gave us the Torah as our guidebook. He gave us mitzvahs, which are our power tools. And he gave us great leaders like the Rebbe, like Moshe Rabbeinu in his time. And number 4, our learning tonight is advancing this process. So, there was a, there was a, this past week, we passed the date of, I think it was Friday. Friday or Shabbos? Shabbos, yes, Shabbos was called Koach Nisan. We're at the tail end of the Hebrew month of Nisan, the month of redemption. And the 28 in Hebrew letters is the letters Chaf and Ches. In Hebrew, each letter has a numerical value. So Koach Nisan, Chaf Ches Nisan, the 28th of Nisan. Koach actually is a Hebrew word. It means strength. It was the strength of Nisan. And on that date in 1991, the Rebbe gave a revolutionary talk. And in the end of the talk, he did something that startled everybody. And he said that that he's done everything he can to bring the world to the state of Geula, to bring Mashiach. And he said, he said, the only thing left that I can do, Lamasar ha'inyan aleichem, to give the job over to you. Asu kol asher biyochaltam, do everything in your power. Inyanim shehem ba'ofen deoras detohu, aval b'kelim detikun. Do everything you can. Do it with enormous, whatever power you have, with all your powers, but in an orderly fashion. And lahavi b'pol es Mashiach tzidkenu tekuv miyad mamish, to bring Mashiach in. And so the Rebbe's words that he's done everything that he can, and now he is turning the job over to us, was extraordinarily disturbing for some people. There was a woman who came to the Rebbe the next day in dollars. Thousands of people would line up every Sunday to get dollars and a blessing from the Rebbe. And she cried to the Rebbe and she said, Rebbe, what are you talking about? It's your job to bring Mashiach. It's your job. Who are we? It's your job. You're the Rebbe. And the Rebbe said, if I'm the Rebbe, then you have to, then presumably you should listen to what I say. And I said, it's your job. And she was extraordinarily upset. And he said, no, it is your job. It's your job and your job and your job and your job. And so what does that mean? Did that mean that the Rebbe retired? No, didn't mean the Rebbe retired. As the Rebbe said in countless places, that Mashiach is acting in the world and Mashiach is winning wars in a peaceful fashion. But it's also true that the job was turned over to the Jewish people to finish it up, to do whatever is in their, to conceive of ideas, to conceive of people that they can tell people that we are in this transitional state, inform somebody else. There was a reporter, a non-Jewish reporter, who was intrigued by this whole thing, and he came to the Rebbe, and he said, what should I? And the Rebbe told him certain things, and he said, well, what should I write? And he said, tell the world that Mashiach is coming. Tell the world that it's the time of Mashiach. He said, and don't be embarrassed. Do it because it's true. Don't be embarrassed. And the same thing for the rest of us, not to be embarrassed. It's like the Rebbe has such a track record that such a track record with public pronouncements and with private miracles. So whatever. Okay, good. So now, where did that? So there was a young person who came to a friend of mine for Shabbos. And he said an interesting thought. Each time in human history has its particular job. The Jews have Torah and mitzvahs, that is our guidebook. But era has its own flavor and its own mission. So, so for example, when the Jews left Egypt, before they left Egypt, Hashem didn't want them to leave Egypt until they asked the Egyptians for their gold and silver. And the Egyptians gave gladly. They just threw it at them. Take it, just leave. Hashem had a particular reason why he wanted that to happen. And so that's what the Jews did. They asked, and the Egyptians said, you want one, take 5, just go. And that's what we did. And we loaded up, they gave us donkeys. We loaded up our donkeys with all our bounty. Then when we crossed the sea and the Egyptians chased after us, they changed their mind. They chased after us at the splitting of the sea, and they drowned the rest of their stuff, all their jewels and gold that they never gave us, that they had adorned their horses with when they were chasing after us. They washed up on shore, and the Jews wanted to take it. And Moshe said, no, not now. Your job in Egypt was to get the gold and silver. Right now, our job is to proceed forward to Har Sinai, to Mount Sinai, and to get the Torah. It's not our job right now. And so the same thing that was their job a few weeks earlier was no longer their job. So so the leader of the generation is the person who can tell us what is the unique job that we have. And the Rebbe said that the Rebbe told us that from time to time, the job of the Jewish people changes. The main focus of the Jewish people changes. And he said the main focus of the Jewish people, yes, we have to keep the entire Torah and all the mitzvahs. None of them, they don't get abrogated and they don't get less important. But from time to time, there's a new focus. And the Rebbe said the focus is to prepare the world for Mashiach. And that it's not one person's job, it's all of our jobs, because everybody knows somebody. And anyway, okay, good. So,
But Shalamis, people seem to want to know how soon we're talking about and what's going to happen at that time.
What's going to happen at that time? There's many books on what's going to happen at that time. There's, shall I make a list of interesting books for you? There's,
no, not for me. I'm saying to other people.
No, I know. For
they want to know.
Yeah, I can.
When is it coming and what?
I would like to know.
Yeah, what, the books? Yeah, I think it's a good idea actually to provide a book list.
Yeah, the books.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea. And I don't have it. I have a whole shelf. I can bring my shelf out, but and some of the books are absolutely delightful. There's a book by I have to think of the name offhand. Okay, I'm gonna think
It's
about
okay,
the books.
don't worry.
Yeah. Okay, good. So and Molly, I don't know exactly in numbers when it's going to happen, but I know it is happening. I know it is happening now, and just from the
It's a slow thing. Can I interrupt by saying
Yes.
it's like each day and year and it's slowly happened. It's like who would have ever thought that the Jews would be living in Israel again? Never. And then they got their own state. So that's like a level. Like I'm just adding my own because if you don't look for little things every day, like that are getting closer and closer and closer, then
you could get very discouraged. Yes.
Yeah, and there are things that happen slowly that you look for.
Yes.
In like society, what's going on in the world and in Israel.
Yeah. I mean, if you think about it, that Arab country after Arab country, just in the past few years, are befriending Israel. That's totally remarkable. Arab country after Arab country after Arab country, and like countries like Lebanon say, I'm next, I'm going to be Israel's friend. It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. So there are things. It's just that there's so much distraction in the world. The whole pandemic, it just robbed everybody of their brains, robbed everybody of their attention, but there's a lot going on beyond the pandemic.
And that must be part of it too.
Pardon?
The pandemic must be part of it also.
The pandemic is part of it also, and also the Hashem had to agree to it, right? Hashem had to agree to it. So
I think it did. I think it's making people appreciate things, appreciate their families, appreciate their
Yeah.
loved ones,
There was a
appreciate
lot.
them, their health, and that makes people work on themselves
Yeah.
and have higher aspirations
Yes.
and less materialism, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. There was a gorgeous little video. I wish I'd made such a thing. It was by he sounded Scandinavian, and he was, it was a beautiful, beautiful little piece. And he was he filmed himself talking to his little children, and they said, "Oh, please, please read us a story about the pandemic again, please, please." And so he reads a story about how before the pandemic people were, um, they were all tuned into their iPhones, and they were tuned into this and tuned into that, and nobody talked to each other. And then all of a sudden they were put into their homes, and all of a sudden kids discovered each other, the parents discovered the kids. They couldn't do so much, they couldn't go places, so they took walks, and slowly they discovered each other again, and they had meals without the iPhone, and they had, it was a charming little piece. Halavai that should be what happens. So anyway, I want to I never talk about, and this is just, it has nothing to do with our forum here. I in general, I don't talk about politics, virus, or vaccine. I just don't talk from the very beginning, from even before the vaccine was a reality, because as soon as whatever. So I those three things are things I don't talk about. But tonight I'm going to talk about politics and religion. Another thing you're not supposed to talk about, but I talk about religion all the time. But I'm going to talk about a little story about politics and religion. So it's a little Rebbe story. So there's a very famous family called the Shemtos, and it means good name. And one of their this story happened, I think, in 1989, and there was one young Shem Tov who went to Uruguay to be an emissary of the Lubavitcher Rebbe. And he didn't like almost all the people who are sent out. They don't know the language of the country they're going to. They don't know. They have extraordinary little money. There's no, like, some people think that there's a huge Chabad central headquarters that gives tons of money to these people. These people sink or swim. They always swim. They don't sink, but they go out and they make miracles on their own. So he was sent to be the Lubavitcher emissary in I don't even know how to say it, Montevideo, Uruguay. Montevideo. So anyway, he befriended somebody, and when he was visiting this person in the hospital, this person got into a car accident. Another person was visiting at the same time, and so they got to know each other. And this other person was a senator, and his name was Senator Luis Alberto Lacala Herrera, and he was a senator in Uruguay. And he mentioned to Rabbi Shem Tov, I might come from some kind of Jewish origins. And he explained that that a great grandmother told the family that they might descend from the conversos, which we know in our language we call them the Marranos often, And these were there was a time in Jewish history where time of Columbus, frankly, where you were not allowed to be Jewish. You were just not allowed to be Jewish. You either had to convert or leave the country. And back then to move was much more difficult than it is now. You had to give up everything. You just had to leave your house, leave your stuff, and go. And it was very difficult, when you have families and jobs to just take off and start over again like you're 19. And so the people who didn't want to start over again, some people pretended to, as we all know, they pretended to be non-Jews, but they lived Jewish lives in secret. Many, many fascinating books about it. If anybody wants to find fascinating history books about it.
I would love to read them.
Yeah. So I have to make a book list. That's another thing. Okay. So he said there might be some roots of my family from the conversos. And he said that his own mother used to visit an old Spanish woman in the marketplace every Friday night. And the Spanish woman would cover her head and light candles. And because she told her mother, it's an ancient tradition. He doesn't know if his mother also did it, but he knows that his mother went to this lady every Friday night. So anyway, so they had this meeting in the hospital near their mutual friend, and Rabbi Shem Tov said, "Why don't you come to the Chabad house for lunch? We can continue our discussion." So the senator came to the Chabad house for lunch, and he introduced Rabbi Shem Tov to Uruguay politics and Uruguay Jewish history, and Rabbi Shem Tov was very interested, and he said, if I can ever, and the senator said, if I can ever be of help to you or your Chabad house, please tell me. And Rabbi Shem Tov said, and if I can ever be of help to you in any way, please tell me. And the senator said, you can be of help to me. You can be of help to me right now. And Rabbi Shem Tov said, yeah, please tell me, how can I be of help to you? And he said, I'll tell you, you can be of help to me because the senator said, I want to help Jews more. And Rabbi Shem Tov said, how do you want to help Jews? He said, I want to help Jews. I want to help Jews by becoming the president of Uruguay. And I want you to help me become president of Uruguay. And Rabbi Shem Tov, who's like brand new in Uruguay, said, you want me to help you become president of Uruguay? How am I going to help you become president of Uruguay? And the senator said, because you are connected to the Lubavitcher Rebbe, and you can get me an audience with the Lubavitcher Rebbe. Can you imagine? So Rabbi Shem Tov said, that could be arranged. And then he said, I'll tell you something. The Rebbe doesn't mind meeting world leaders, especially, he said, especially if they commit to telling their nation about the 7 Noahide laws, the 7 laws for the entire, for humanity, for the non-Jewish world, for the entire humanity. And if they promote the 7 laws as a way, as they promote the 7 laws in their government, in their country. And he proceeded to tell him the 7 laws, which it's a prohibition against idolatry, against bloodshed, against sexual sins, against theft, against eating from a living animal, against blasphemy, against God. Can't blaspheme God, and you have to establish a legal system. Those are the 7 Noahide laws. And he said, if you're willing to do that, Senator, I'm sure the Rebbe would be very happy to meet with you. And he said, I'd love to do that. I'd love to promote those laws. And I'd love to meet the Rebbe because he can help me become president. And so, can you imagine? So Rabbi Shem Tov said, I'll arrange it. But meantime, I want you to learn more about the 7 laws. And he gave him, back then, the first book that was written about the 7 laws, the first book was The Path of the Righteous Gentile. Since then, there are many, many other books, and all fascinating. And he gave him tons of material on the 7 laws, because although those 7 laws, they sound very brief, they're, they have many subdivisions, a lot more detail to it. And the senator said, I promise to read every word that you gave me. And meantime, I'm going to arrange for my trip. And so Rabbi Shem Tov arranged that he should go to, that the senator, he talked to the Rebbe, and the senator arranged his flight. And he landed in New York. He settled himself in a hotel. And what did he want? He didn't expect, all he wanted was to stand in line on Sunday dollars and to be able to see the Rebbe. And so, Sunday dollars, there were thousands of men and thousands of women lined up every Sunday, Jews and non-Jews. And so, so Rabbi Shem Tov in Uruguay arranged for another rabbi to pick up the senator at his hotel, 11 o'clock Sunday morning, and bring him to the dollars line. And when that other rabbi showed up at the hotel at 11:15, 15 minutes later than he said, There was no senator there. The senator
Oh,
has
no.
the senator at the stroke of 11, that guy wasn't there to pick him up, and so the senator immediately hailed a yellow cab, and he said, "Take me to Crown Heights pronto!"
Oh,
And take me to
gosh.
Crown Heights pronto. And the cab driver says, "You mean Brooklyn?" And he says, "CC 770 Eastern Parkway, the Rebbe." And the cabbie driver said, "Ah, I know that. Yes, the Rebbe." And he brings him straight to. Oh no, he gets into traffic. The traffic is horrendous. The traffic crawls over the Brooklyn Bridge. And then he's stuck behind a parade, a demonstration. He doesn't know what it is. And he gets fed up. He thanks the taxi driver. He pays him. He has no idea how to get on the subway. He starts running. He starts jogging. This guy jogs all the way down Flatbush Avenue. He jogs around what is it, Grand Army Plaza. He goes up Eastern Parkway. He must have jogged for miles until he gets to 770, and he joins the Dollars line, and he's so excited. And there's a young rabbinic student ahead of him, and they introduce themselves to each other. And the senator says, Rabbi Shem Tov in Uruguay arranged for me to be here. And so the Bacher says, "Really? Just one second." And he goes and he finds, because he had seen earlier that Rabbi Shem Tov's father-in-law was milling around. And so he called Rabbi Shem Tov's father-in-law. He said, "There's this guy that your son-in-law arranged to come to the Rebbe." So the Rabbi Kitrick, I guess it's Kitrick, I guess that's how you pronounce it, takes him out of the line and brings him to the Rebbe. And so he goes to the Rebbe and he tells the Rebbe all about how he's been learning the 7 Noahide laws and how he wants to promulgate them in Uruguay
Wow.
and how he wants to be president of Uruguay. And the Rebbe gives him $1 and he said, "Here's $1 for you to win the presidency. And here's another $1. And this $1 you're going to put into a charity box on your presidential desk, and it's going to and you're going to promote the mitzvah of charity in your country." And he said, "Yes, absolutely, I'm going to do that." And then a couple months later, November 26, 1989, in New York, it was the International Shluchim Convention, and so Rabbi Shem Tov was in New York for that occasion, and he gets a call, and he finds out, and he finds out that the senator who, by the way, the senator was in last place when the election began, and he ended up as the president of Uruguay. And so he was totally astounded by it, and he went to tell the Rebbe he won by 7%, and the Rebbe smiled, and the Rebbe said, "Surely you'll tell him the significance of the number 7," and anyway, so he calls him up right away. Rabbi Shem Tov, he calls the president now right away, and the president is in the middle of his victory celebration, and he comes to the phone. And the rabbi tells him all about the all about the meaning of number 7, and they correspond to the 7 days of the week. And by the way, if you know what day of the week you're born on, it relates to these 7 things. For example, Sunday is
What's
number 1. It
called?
relates to love and kindness if you're born on Sunday. Monday is relates to discipline. Tuesday relates to compassion and beauty. There are many, many other meanings too. This is just shorthand. Wednesday is ambition and endurance. That's my day. Thursday is humility. Friday is bonding, foundation. It's also speediness. And Saturday is sovereignty and majesty. So he told him about these different things too. And anyway, so the
I think it's getting worse.
so anyway, the now president what's his last name again? Herrera, the now president, he hangs up the phone. He asks one of his aides, "Do you have an American dollar? I need an American dollar." And he takes the American dollar and he puts it in a charity box. He said, "This is my first act as president." And then years later, he appeared at a dinner in New York celebrating Chabad's 10th year in Uruguay. He flew to join that dinner, and he spoke at the dinner, and he held up a very old-looking dollar bill. And he says, "I know that this dollar bill looks worn, but it's not because it's devalued in any way. It's because I carry it with me wherever I go." And that's the dollar that he got for the Rebbe. He said, "The Rebbe taught me 7 is precious." By the way, the Rebbe is the 7th Lubavitcher Rebbe. And I'm so grateful for the Rebbe and that I won by 7%. And anyway, so, for all of us.
Shalom, Mr. Huddis.
Yeah.
How does the Rebbe get all these dollar bills? I mean, it's like hundreds of thousands of dollars he has to give out. I mean, if there's like hundreds of people there, so it's a lot of money each
Yeah,
day.
he gave out probably, he could.
Where'd he get all that money?
He could have given out maybe
Donations.
1,000. I don't know. It's from, I don't know if it was, it's a good question. I don't know if it was his personal funds or if it was from Chabad in general, but the dollars did a lot of good. And today, my gosh, they auction off those dollars for thousands of dollars.
Wow.
Because people have had such phenomenal blessing with those dollars. And, they've had phenomenal blessing. So,
Well, it's a really wonderful story because I didn't know that Montevideo had a
Chabad.
or had a president like that either.
Yeah.
'Cause
Wow.
I was there in 1980,
Mm-hmm.
I think, in Montevideo. And